baby, we've got to keep it real.
Jim Lauderdale is keeping it real on his brand new album, Game Changer. We caught up with Jim at his home in Nashville, where he'll be taking part in Americana Fest in September. So we talk about what to expect at the Americana Festival, how Nashville has changed over the years, and we go deep into Game Changer, Jim's 35th studio album. So with Game Changer, is there a something that binds the 10 songs that make up this album together for you?
Yes. I started a few years ago with this song that was the first song on there called That Kind of Life, That Kind of Day. The pedal steel and guitar riff came to me, and then the structure of the song, and I went in the studio and happened to cut that one.
Go through all you must do, and know that while you're getting where you're going, go through, don't go away, and have that kind of life, that kind of day.
And then the next time I went back in, the song that's song number 2, Friends Again, and a few of the other songs, Our Happy Hour's Almost Over, came out. And so I realized at that time, it's like, okay, with these songs, I want to do a very focused country record, and of my take on country being
Right.
anything from the 50s through the early 70s. I feel like a buddy of mine, the late Chris Gaffney,
Right.
used to say, I don't listen to country music after 1975.
Right.
And which, I mean, listen, of course, there were a lot of great artists after 1975, but kind of the style had been cemented pretty much. And then after that, I think us country recording artists kind of would do so, even the traditional country guys and gals would do something in that vein.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like with this record, it's very heavy pedal steel, heavy Telecaster. There's
Mm-hmm.
fiddle on a few things.
Yep.
The way the harmonies are. I used Lily May and Frank Rishi on harmonies, who I'm not sure if they've been to New Zealand. They've been to Australia a few times, but just great singers. And Lily May has put out,
she's on Third Man, right?
Yes. And just a phenomenal artist.
Right.
And I'm actually doing a side project where I'm trying to co-write with Lily May and write other songs, and to try to feature her brother Frank too,
Right.
who's a great guitar player, and do a kind of a trio type project.
Right.
Mostly acoustic-y with drums. And so we were in the studio last week and going back in September, and we've done 11 songs, but I want to do some more to try to get the best out of that batch.
Gotcha.
We don't have a name. We don't have a band name yet. But,
all right. So thinking of Lily May and especially Third Man, I'm curious as to how like Third Man's presence in Nashville has, and I think the Black Keys have a similar kind of thing going on there. Has that affected the music scene in the city? Has it changed the perception?
I think so. Now, Nashville for, many years now, in the 70s, other folks from other genres other than country moved here. In the 80s, like John Prine moved, Nancy Griffith, Emmylou Harris. Well, Emmylou Harris was country, but people, and then rockers started coming here. Gary Talent, who the bass player for Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band, moved here 20 something years ago. And I used to do a lot at his studio he had. John Oates from Daryl Hall and John Oates this is his primary residence now, but
right.
Different rock bands and different folks. Nashville also seems to be the place where folks, artists or musicians that had lived in New York City or Los Angeles,
right,
have also started moving here. But I think Dan and Jack White, I think it definitely kind of lent it a bunch of cachet to Nashville as being an okay, and not just country.
Right.
So, and Nashville's there's no place like it as far as the amount of great musicians and writers and studios that there are here. I don't think people need to or have to move to Nashville in order to do music. It's just if you feel led to do that. But there's for years people were moving to Austin, Texas.
Sure. Yeah.
They still do.
Yep.
Texas has its own kind of vibe to it, which is really cool, and a lot of history. But yeah, and this Game Changer record, the style of country it is very influenced by stuff like the Grand Ole Opry and mixed with Graham Parsons type. Graham really, in the records, those two solo records, he was really trying to make a Bakersfield, meaning, the Buck Owens, Merle Haggard.
Yep.
He was trying to make that kind of record consciously. James Burton, that played on that, done tons of recording sessions and played most of the solos on the early Merle Haggard records. They recorded in Los Angeles, but with Emmylou Harris and with James Burton, it morphed more into just Graham.
Yeah.
And his take on country music. Some of the songs were a little rockier.
Yeah.
But
he was still, a bird for a short time, wasn't he?
Right. Yeah. And the Flying Burrito Brothers were kind of rocky. And so anyway, he was a big influence on me. And so this Game Changer record has those early country sensibilities to them.
Gotcha. One track I wanted to touch on is called Wishbone, which I think is a co-write. And I just love the opening line. I've got a wishbone where my backbone ought to be. Is that how you start writing? Do you come up with the first line and then off you go?
I've got a wishbone where my backbone ought to be. It takes more than wishful thinking to live your dream.
Now with Wishbone, I was in Australia the trip before the one time I got to come to New Zealand.
Right. And
that was a few years ago, opening up for Nick Lowe, who I'd not toured with him since 1994. I think it was, or 95.
Right.
And I've always been such a huge fan. And so that was really a thrill for me to come to New Zealand for the first time. And I hope the first of many. And so I was in Australia, and my manager lives in Australia most of the time. He's here some, but Jeremy Dillon, and I had met Adam Harvey at several times at some country things in Australia. He's got a real rich voice and great songwriter. So we got together for a writing appointment and wrote a couple of songs. And then we were going to wrap it up. And he said, I've got this title that's been hanging around for about 25 years. I've been saving. And I said, what is it? And he goes, well, the first line goes, I've got a wishbone where my backbone ought to be. And then then this melody started coming out, and we just, wrote it fairly quickly.
Awesome.
And the funny thing about that song is I've done it solo live a few times because I haven't been playing these things out with a full band.
Right.
And it's funny with that song, when I do it solo, people either kind of laugh nervously or something when that line comes out.
Yep.
For the first few choruses, or they're very silent.
Yeah.
So I'll see. I think I'm going to do it this Friday at the Grand Ole Opry. So I'll see,
And do you gauge an audience by their reaction to that?
Well, sometimes I think, like when I'm doing it solo, I think, and I kid around a lot, and during my shows. So I think maybe they think it's a comedy song when I do it solo sometimes. So, but when you've got the band kicking it off, and and with a pedal steel guitar, it's a sadder
Absolutely. Absolutely. So another co-write is we're all we've got with with Mary and Jamie.
With Mary Gauthier and Jamie Harris, two of my favorite people and writers.
We landed here like scattered seeds, with mighty hopes and mighty dreams. Came up from the same melting pot, and while we're here, we're all we've got.
We were in Louisiana at a songwriting retreat several years ago where they, I think there were 20 something songwriters, and they'd pair you up in these groups every day. And so on our last day, I asked the person organizing, I said, listen, I'd really like to write with Mary and Jamie. I've never written with them. So we got together, and I was thinking about, this division going on in the U.S., which has quadrupled since we wrote this song.
Yep.
And just about, what a shame it is when you can sit and talk to somebody or a relative you haven't seen in a while or whatever, and just be having a great time, and then bring up some certain topics, political topics, and then all of a sudden it's just like, and just, this animosity. And so that song is, for us, is, kind of a thing of like, gosh, please, folks, let's agree to disagree in a, more civil way.
Right. So is Nashville a very political town? It's right in the middle of the country.
It's split. It's actually, Nashville and Memphis are kind of two of the split kind of liberal places as opposed to a more conservative rest of the state.
Right.
So it's which that's the way it tends to be in most cities. Not all of them, but anywhere in the U.S., most of the cities are, kind of have half and half.
Yeah. So when we take our trip to Nashville, and especially the Americana Fest, what can we expect? Because I know you're going to be part of it.
Yes, and it's what day are you arriving?
Right on Monday, I think.
Okay,
the 13th, is it? Yeah.
Things will start that night. There'll be some events. I guess it kind of kicks off the next day with down at this hotel, there are like conference rooms where they'll be having panels and things like that during the day, throughout the week. And then now Tuesday night, they will have a few different places will have some shows, kind of unofficial shows. Wednesday, there's the award show.
Right.
And then after the award show, they'll start having the showcases where bands I'm not sure how many, I'm not sure if it's like 200 bands will be playing, something like that. Throughout the week. And I'm not sure the amount of clubs, but throughout the city, there'll be these showcases going on. Like, say, for instance, I'm playing Friday night at a place called the Exit Inn. So I'll go on early, like at 7 to 7:40 a band. So from 7 till midnight. So I guess 5 different bands or solo artists, whatever, will play that night from 7 to midnight. And then there'll be shows late night too. But it will be jam-packed. It'll be more music than a variety of music than you've ever seen. It's good. I used to go to Austin in back in the 80s when I was trying to get a record deal. There's a thing called South by Southwest. It started out as being a weekend.
Yeah, because I think I went to like the third one in like 1990, and it was still tiny.
Yeah, they were small, and they were for people trying to get a record deal. They wouldn't have any signed artists. And then through the years, it grew and grew to where it's huge, and you'll have, one of several of the biggest acts in the US or the world or whatever come and play. So it kind of got away from the original thing, but that's not to say that it's still not a good thing, but it's just, I think that this Americana conference will always be a more manageable thing. And, but it's really, even though sadly, the amount of artists that want to come and play, they don't have the space for.
Right.
So I think that's one of the, few complaints about it. It's like, hey, we can't get in to play.
Right.
But it's just because there's hundreds, so
there are
many
hundreds.
want
I've seen
to.
the list.
But it's good. I really, Americana, when it started, however many years ago, with kind of that moniker, it was I remember immediately thinking at the time, because it started off as a radio chart, meaning in one of the musical trade magazines, they would have a way to tabulate. It's like, well, we're going to call this, if this station will come on board, we'll call them and find out how many times they played this record. And I remember playing at one of the first conventions they had. It was just a couple of hundred radio people and other music biz people. It was in New Orleans, and Joe Ely was on the show, and I was on that. And I was thinking, this is giving a radio format to people like Joe Ely and Emmylou Harris, who wasn't getting the radio play. People like Johnny Cash, Guy Clark, you name it. These awesome writers who couldn't.
John Prine.
John Prine, who couldn't fit on rock radio or mainstream country radio. And so it's really been a good thing, and it has just grown. I never thought it would get as popular as it's gone. So it's really been good.